The gavel hit the wood like a loud gunshot in the fancy room with soft red curtains. For $50 million, Vivian's stepfather had just sold her soul, her body, and her whole future. But the man who won the bid was not just a rich man who stayed away from people. He was a hunter who had walked the night for 500 years. The bright red silk of Vivian Monroe's dress did not feel like a fancy party dress. It felt more like a pretty rope around her neck. She stood in a dark little room at the St. James Syndicate. This was a secret club for rich men only, hidden under the busy streets of Manhattan. The air smelled strong of old wood, expensive cigars, and something metal she could not name. Vivian was 22 years old. She had just finished college with a degree in art history. She knew nothing about the secret magic world that rich people lived in. Her mother, Catherine, had died suddenly 1 year ago under strange conditions. After that, her stepfather, Richard Gallagher, fell apart. Richard was a man who managed big money for other people. In public, he looked smart and careful. Behind closed doors, he was stuck in secret gambling and bad deals. He owed tens of millions of dollars to very dangerous people. These people did not just hurt legs. They wiped out whole families. "Just smile, Vivi," Richard had told her in the car on the way there. His hands shook while he fixed his expensive tie. "It is a party for meeting people. There are men in this room who can erase my debt. I only need you to be nice. Be the pretty daughter. That is all." It was a lie. When the heavy wood doors opened, Vivian was not led into a big hall with friendly talks and champagne. She was taken into a room that looked like a small theater. About 50 men and a few women sat in soft old chairs. They wore fine suits and old-style dresses. Their faces stayed hidden in the shadows. In the middle of the floor stood a round, raised stage covered in red velvet. A tall man with a silver-tipped cane and a gray suit stepped onto the stage. "Welcome, special guests. Tonight we have a very special thing to sell to clear a big debt that Mr. Richard Gallagher owes." Fear grabbed Vivian's throat. She turned to look at Richard, but 2 big men in dark suits stepped between them and blocked her. "Richard, what is happening?" Vivian whispered, her voice shaking. Richard would not look at her. He stared at the floor. Sweat formed on his forehead. "I am sorry, Vivi. It was the only way. They were going to kill me." Before she could scream, a heavy hand pushed down on her shoulder and forced her toward the bright stage. The auction man, called Balthazar, smiled. The smile did not reach his cold, empty eyes. "Miss Vivian Monroe," Balthazar told the room. His voice was loud even without a microphone. 22 years old, perfect health, never touched by the bad parts of our world. But most important, she has the Catherine Monroe bloodline, a bloodline of pure power that is sleeping but still strong. Vivian's heart beat hard against her ribs. Bloodline, what did that mean? She looked at the people watching her. They did not look like normal rich men. Their eyes caught the low light in strange ways, flashes of gold, red, and hunting silver. "We will start the bids at 10 million, Balthazar said. "Balthazar, 15, a voice called right away from the second row. It was Viktor Volkov, a famous Russian shipping boss known for his bad temper in the newspapers. When he leaned forward, Vivian thought she saw his teeth grow a little longer in the light. 20, another voice said. Vivian stood still, frozen by the crazy fear of the moment. She was being sold. Her own stepfather had brought her here to pay his gambling debts by selling her like an animal to rich men. 25, Volkov growled, his eyes locked on her neck. Vivian felt cold sweat on her skin. 30 million. The bids rose very fast. The men in the room did not just look at her with desire. They looked at her with a deep, hungry need. 40 million, Volkov shouted, hitting the arm of his chair so hard the wood cracked. I will have the Monroe girl. Her blood belongs to the Volkov pack. Pack? Vivian's mind spun. Balthazar lifted his gavel. 40 million to Mr. Volkov. Going once, going twice. 50 million. The voice did not shout. It was a soft, smooth, deep voice that cut through the quiet room like a sharp knife. The air in the room seemed to get colder the moment the words were said. Every head turned to the back of the theater. A man stepped out of the shadows. He looked as if he had been cut from stone and night. He wore a dark blue suit with no tie. His open collar showed a strong neck and jaw. His dark hair was a little messy around a face that was dangerously handsome. But it was his eyes that took the air from Vivian's lungs. They were bright, shining, ice blue, old and empty of human warmth. Damien Ashford. Even Vivian, who stayed away from rich circles, knew the name. Damien Ashford was a ghost in the money world. He owned half the buildings in Manhattan, many medicine companies, and private armies. Yet he never gave interviews, never had clear photos, and never went to public parties. 50 million, Balthazar said, losing his calm for the first time. Mr. Ashford, we are honored by your visit. Volkov stood up, his big chest rising and falling. Ashford, this is a syndicate auction, not one of your council orders. You cannot just walk in here. Damien did not even look at the Russian. He kept his cold eyes locked only on Vivian. She felt like a mouse under the eyes of a hawk. 50 million, Damien said again, his voice almost a whisper, yet it filled the quiet room. And if anyone in this room bids one more cent, I will make sure their whole family is gone before the sun comes up. The threat hung in the air, heavy and final. Volkov showed his teeth. A low growl shook in his chest, but he slowly sat back down. No one dared fight the king. Balthazar swallowed hard. 50 million. Sold. To Damien Ashford. The gavel hit down. Damien did not wait for Balthazar to finish. He walked down the middle path. His steps made no sound on the wood floor. When he reached the stage, the two big guards stepped back on their own and lowered their heads in pure respect. Damien stood in front of Vivian. Up close he smelled of cedar wood, expensive whiskey, and winter air. He reached out. His long, pale fingers gently touched the line of her jaw. His skin was freezing cold. "You are shaking, little bird," he said softly. "Please," Vivian whispered. One tear fell from her eye. "Do not do this." Damien's thumb wiped the tear away. "Your stepfather sold you to monsters, Vivian. I just bought the cage." He turned his head a little toward Richard, who was shrinking into the dark. "The debt is paid, Gallagher. If I ever see your face in my city again, I will tear your heart from your chest, for real." Without another word, Damien took Vivian's arm. His hold was impossible to break, like a steel trap. "Walk with me, Miss Monroe. We have a long drive ahead of us." The ride to the Hudson Valley happened in heavy silence. Vivian sat in the back of the strong black car, pushing herself as far into the corner of the leather seat as she could. Across from her sat Damien Ashford. He did not look at her. His eyes stayed on a tablet in his hands, scrolling through stock numbers and secret messages. In the front seat was a man Damien called Alistair. He drove with perfect care. His eyes sometimes checked the mirror to watch Vivian. "Where are you taking me?" Vivian finally asked. Her voice broke the quiet. She hated how weak she sounded. Damien did not look up from his screen. "To my house. It is the only place within 500 miles where Viktor Volkov and his dogs cannot reach you." Confusion mixed with her fear. "He growled at you back there, and you said you would wipe out his family. What is going on? What are you people?" Damien sighed and put the tablet down. He leaned forward and rested his elbows on his knees. In the passing streetlights, his eyes shone with a hunting silver light. "Tell me, Vivian, what did your mother tell you about your family history?" "Nothing," she said. "We are normal. We are just normal people." Catherine Monroe was many things, but she was not normal, Damien said quietly. She was a sanguine herald. That is a rare change in human blood that acts like a superpower for my kind. A vampire who drinks from a herald does not just eat. They become safe from the sun. They gain strength like the oldest ones. Your mother kept you hidden. She covered your scent with normal human life. But when she died, Richard found her notebooks. He learned what you were. He saw he was sitting on a $50 million prize. Vivian stared at him. A wild laugh rose in her throat, but she stopped it. Vampires. You are telling me you're a vampire, and Volkov is, what, a werewolf? Do not laugh at what you do not understand, Damien warned. His voice dropped lower. It shook with old power that made every hair on Vivian's arms stand up. Our world has lived in the shadows for thousands of years. We control the banks, the governments, the wars. And right now, the only reason you are not being torn apart in a Russian hideout is because I bought you. Then let me go, she said, sudden anger pushing past her fear. If you are so good, open the door and let me go. Damien smiled. It was a scary, beautiful smile. If I let you out on this road, you would be dead or taken within 10 minutes. You carry the scent of a herald, Vivian. You are a bright light in the dark to every hungry hunter on the East Coast. You belong to me now, not as a slave, but as my protected one and my partner. Partner? She gasped. To stop the Vampire Council from forcing me to share your blood, I must claim you in a legal and official way in our society. You will live in my house. You will wear my mark. You will act as my beloved. Before she could understand the crazy words, the car slowed. It turned off the winding mountain road and passed through big black iron gates marked with a wolf and a raven. The car rolled up a long stone path until it stopped in front of a huge, old-style mansion built into the side of a cliff. It was beautiful, scary, and completely alone. Alistair opened her door. Vivian stepped out into the freezing night air. The wind whipped the thin silk of her red dress around her legs. Damien led her inside. The inside of the house was surprisingly modern. Tall glass windows looking over the valley, smooth black marble floors, and walls lined with old books and Renaissance paintings. Alistair will show you to your rooms, Damien said as he took off his suit jacket. Do not try to run. The woods are full of guards, and the things that walk them at night do not take prisoners. He turned to walk away, but Vivian's fear pushed her. She jumped forward and grabbed his arm. Wait, you spent $50 million on me. You said you did not buy me for blood, but you are a vampire. What do you really want from me? Damien froze. He looked down at her hand on his arm. Slowly he turned back to face her. The space between them disappeared. He stepped close, his tall body making her tip her head back to look at him. He leaned down until his face was inches from hers. She could feel the unnatural cold coming from his skin, yet his breath on her neck sent a strange warm feeling through her stomach. What do I want from you? He whispered, his lips almost touching her ear. He breathed in deep, his chest rising as he took in her scent. A low, pained sound came from his throat. I want to tear that dress off you. I want to put my teeth into your collarbone and drink until I forget the last 500 years. I want to ruin you, Vivian. She gasped. Her fingers dug into his shirt. She should be terrified. She was terrified. But there was a dark, strong pull between them, a chemical force she could not explain. Damien pulled back fast. His eyes were completely black. The ice blue was gone, swallowed by wide pupils. He was fighting for control. His jaw was so tight it looked like the bone might break. But I will not, he said, more to himself than to her. He took a sharp step back. The cold, rich man returned to his face. You are safe here, Miss Monroe, as long as you follow my rules. Do not leave the house. Do not invite anyone inside. And most important, do not ever tempt me like that again, because my self-control has limits. He turned and disappeared into the shadows of the hallway, leaving Vivienne standing alone in the big entrance hall. Her heart raced, her blood sang, and her mind raced with the knowledge that she was completely, hopelessly trapped in the home of the Vampire King. For 3 weeks, the Ashford house in the Hudson Valley became Vivian's whole world. It was a golden cage made of Italian marble, original Caravaggio paintings, and wide views of the misty hills. Her clothes had been completely replaced overnight, with things from expensive stores and private makers in Paris. Soft sweaters, silk lounge clothes, and evening dresses that cost more than her college tuition. Yet the loneliness was loud. Damien Ashford was a ghost in his own house. He spent his days in a dark underground part of the estate, running his empire. At night he would come out, dressed perfectly in fine suits, an old expensive watch shining on his wrist. They ate dinner every evening at opposite ends of a long wood table that could seat 20 people. He was strongly protective yet completely distant. He asked her about her art history studies, talked with her about Renaissance buildings, and made sure her glass of fine red wine was never empty. But he never touched her. Not since that first night in the entrance hall. The control he showed was so strong, it felt like a solid wall between them. "You look tired," Damien said one Tuesday evening. His voice cut through the quiet sound of silverware. Vivian pushed her plate of seared scallops away. "It is hard to sleep when you know a Russian werewolf is trying to find a way past the security." Damien's lips moved in the smallest ghost of a smile. "Viktor Volkov is a brute, but he is not smart. He uses pure force. The security around this property was built by former top engineers and made stronger by spell workers older than the Magna Carta. He cannot simply walk through the front door." "That does not mean he is not trying," Vivian answered, her frustration rising. "I read the Financial Times in your library today. Volkov's company, VTech Logistics, just bought a big share of a private army company. Former soldiers. He is not sending wolves, Damien. He is buying a human army." Damien paused. His ice-blue eyes narrowed a little. For the first time he looked truly impressed. "You have been studying my enemies." "I am locked in a house with a 500-year-old vampire," Vivian said, standing up from the table. "I prefer to know who is trying to kill me and who is supposed to keep me alive." Before Damien could answer, the heavy oak doors of the dining room burst open. Alistair stood in the doorway. His usually perfect suit was wrinkled. A submachine gun hung across his chest. Dark, thick blood dripped from his temple. "Sir," Alistair gasped, his eyes moving to Vivian. "The outer line has been broken. They got past the wards." Damien stood up. He moved with a speed that Vivian's human eyes could barely follow. 1 second he was at the head of the table. The next he stood right in front of Alistair. "How? The wards need ancient blood to break." "Volkov did not use his pack," Alistair said, holding his weapon. "He used human soldiers. They drove armored trucks straight through the eastern gates. They are carrying firebombs and white phosphorus grenades. The wards do not see humans as a magic threat." A hard shake hit the house, as an explosion went off somewhere in the west wing. The crystal light above the dining table swung hard, raining glass onto the floor. Damien's whole manner changed. The rich gentleman disappeared. In his place stood a top hunter, his jaw locked. His eyes changed from ice blue into a terrifying bottomless black. The air in the room dropped 20 degrees. A small winter formed around his anger. He turned to Vivian and grabbed her shoulders. His hold was hard and desperate. "Listen to me very carefully. Alistair is taking you to the safe room under the wine cellar. The door is made of titanium and lined with lead. You do not open it. Not for me, not for Alistair. Only when the sun rises." "Damien, you cannot fight an army of soldiers alone," Vivian screamed over the sound of automatic gunfire echoing down the western halls. "I have lived through plagues, inquisitions, and 2 world wars, little bird," Damien said softly. "A few Russian thugs with guns are nothing but practice." He let her go and ran into the hallway, moving like a blur of shadow and deadly purpose. Alistair grabbed Vivian's hand and pulled her toward the kitchen halls. They ran through the winding servant passages. The sound of tearing metal and men screaming followed them. It did not sound like a gunfight. It sounded like a slaughter. As they reached the heavy iron door of the cellar, a huge explosion shook the floorboards right above them. The ceiling cracked. A shower of debris and dust fell down. "Go!" Alistair pushed her toward the stairs and turned to face the hallway as heavy combat boots thudded closer. Vivian stumbled down the stone steps, her heart hammered against her ribs. But when she reached the bottom, a terrifying thought came to her. The gunfire had stopped. The screams had stopped. There was only a heavy, choking silence. Against every instinct to stay safe, she did not open the safe room door. She crept back up the stairs and looked through the settling dust of the hallway. In the center of the big entrance hall, surrounded by the broken bodies of a dozen heavily armed soldiers, was Damien. He was on his knees. His fine suit was torn. A silver-laced phosphorus grenade had exploded at close range. Half of his torso was burned. The skin tried to heal itself, but sizzled and failed as the silver poisoned his healing cells. Standing 10 feet away, stepping casually over a dead soldier, was Viktor Volkov. He was still in human form, wearing a heavy tactical coat and carrying a massive custom shotgun. "You always were too proud, Ashford," Volkov rumbled, pointing the barrel at Damien's head. "Silver might not kill an ancient like you right away, but it slows you down enough for me to take what is mine." Volkov's eyes locked on the cellar doorway. He saw Vivian. A sick, winning grin spread across his face. "Ah, there is the little herald." "Run, Vivian," Damien choked out, coughing up a mouthful of black blood. He tried to stand, but his legs gave out. The silver poison had completely weakened his nerves. "I do not think she is going anywhere," Volkov laughed, loading a shell into the shotgun. He began walking toward the cellar doors. "Your stepfather told me all about your little inheritance, Vivian. With your blood, my pack will not just rule the syndicate. We will rule the sun. I am going to bleed you dry, drop by drop." Vivian backed away. Her hands trembled. She looked at Volkov, then at Damien, who was bleeding out on the marble floor. He had spent $50 million to save her. He had locked her in a cage, yes, but he had never hurt her. He had treated her with a strange, sad respect. She was not going to let him die. Instead of running into the safe room, Vivian ran across the entrance hall. She slid to her knees on the blood-slick marble right beside Damien, putting herself squarely between him and Volkov's shotgun. Volkov paused. His grin faltered. "Move, girl, or I will blow a hole through you and scrape your blood off the floor." "Vivian, what are you doing?" Damien gasped. His eyes were wide with horror as he looked up at her. "Get away." "You said my blood is a super serum," Vivian whispered fiercely. Her hands framed his cold, ash-covered face. "You said it gives you the strength of the ancients." Damien's black eyes widened as he realized what she was offering. "No, I will not turn you into cattle. I will not take it by force." "You are not taking it," she said, her voice growing steady. She tilted her head to the side, showing the pale, unbroken skin of her neck and the pulsing vein right to his mouth. "I am giving it to you. Drink, Damien. Drink and kill him." Volkov realized what was happening 1 second too late. He raised the shotgun and roared, pulling the trigger. But Damien moved. Fueled by instinct and the nearness of the herald's blood, Damien surged upward, pulling Vivian tight against his chest. He buried his face in her neck. His long fangs pierced her skin, just as the shotgun pellets tore through the space where her head had been a fraction of a second before. The bite was not painful. It was a sudden sharp pinch, followed right away by a rush of overwhelming, happy heat. Vivian gasped. Her fingers tangled in Damien's dark hair as he drank. It felt as if a rope of liquid fire had been tied between their souls. She could feel his exhaustion, his ancient loneliness. and now his rapidly exploding power. Damien drank for only 3 seconds, but for a sanguine herald, 3 seconds was a tidal wave of supernatural energy. He pulled back. His eyes were no longer black. They glowed with a terrifying, bright silver light. The burned, poisoned wounds on his torso hissed and smoked violently before knitting together perfectly in a matter of seconds. The silver in his veins was forced out, rejected by the pure strength of Vivian's bloodline. Volkov backed up, his face drained of color. The shotgun trembled in his hands. Impossible. Damien stood up. He did not look like a wounded billionaire anymore. He looked like a god of war. "You came into my home," Damien whispered. His voice echoed from every corner of the entrance hall at the same time. "You brought fire to my safe place, and you threatened my partner." Volkov shifted. His bones cracked and snapped as he desperately tried to force his werewolf change to fight back. But Damien did not give him the time. In a blur of motion, Damien closed the 10-foot gap. He did not use weapons. He slammed his hand directly into Volkov's chest. His fingers pierced the thick tactical armor and the werewolf's ribcage with sickening ease. Volkov choked. Blood spilled over his lips. His eyes were wide in shock. "Your pack is without a leader," Damien hissed into the Russian's ear, "and your bloodline is gone." Volkov collapsed to the floor, lifeless, a gaping hole where his heart used to be. The house fell completely silent, except for the crackling of a small fire burning in the west wing. Damien stood over the body for a long moment. His chest rose and fell. The silver glow slowly faded from his eyes, replaced once again by that piercing ice blue. He turned slowly toward Vivian. She was still sitting on the floor, pressing a hand to her bleeding neck. Her heart raced, not from fear, but from the energy of the bond they had just made. He walked over to her and dropped to his knees. He pulled a silk handkerchief from his ruined suit jacket and gently pressed it against the puncture wounds on her neck. His hands, previously freezing, now felt warm and alive. "You gave it to me," he murmured. His voice was thick with an emotion she had never heard from him before. "You had the chance to run, to let me die, and you gave me your blood." "You saved me at the auction," Vivian replied softly, looking up into his eyes. "We are even," she added. Damien leaned in, his forehead rested against hers. "We will never be even, Vivian. When a vampire drinks willingly given blood from a herald, it is not just a physical act. It is a soul binding. You are not my prisoner anymore. You are my equal, the queen of the syndicate." Vivian's breath caught. She looked around the ruined entrance hall, at the bodies, at the blood, and finally, at the terrifying, beautiful man kneeling before her. She had been sold as property, meant to be a victim in a world of monsters. Instead, she had just crowned the king. "Then I suppose we have a mess to clean up." Her hand rose to cup his jaw. Damien smiled, a true warm smile that reached his eyes. He lifted her effortlessly into his arms, and carried her away from the carnage and into the shadows of their new empire. The auction was over, but their reign had just begun. Did Vivian make the right choice, or has she just traded one golden cage for an empire of shadows? If you were in her shoes, would you have given Damien your blood, or left him to his fate? Let us know in the comments below. Stories about vampires and special bloodlines have been told for hundreds of years in many cultures. In real history, people often created myths about powerful blood or cursed families to explain things they did not understand, like strange illnesses, long-lived rulers, or secret societies. These tales remind us that legends grow from human fears and hopes. They also show how important trust and free choice can be, even in dark stories. Learning about folklore helps us see how people in the past tried to make sense of the world, and it teaches us to look carefully at the stories we hear today. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up, share it, and subscribe so you don't miss my next video.